Good Monday morning. Welcome on in to Morning JOX, JOX 94.5. Damian Mitchell alongside Conrad Van Order and you as well. And what ended up surprisingly being a very interesting weekend here in the state of Alabama. Of course, we know the action on the hardwood with Auburn and Alabama both having some pretty impressive showings over the weekend and some news on the football side of things, especially for the Alabama Crimson Tide. I think, Conrad, we'll start there. We'll start there on the offensive coordinator spot for Alabama is going to look a little different under much speculation and kind of, kicking the can down the road to see what potentially could happen. Of course, we do know the former offensive coordinator for the Seattle Seahawks, Ryan Grubb, was his contract was terminated there at the in the Seattle Seahawks. So it kind of left him as a free agent, I guess you'd say, and he found his way down to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, just kind of, reading the room a little bit. As we know, he has had pairings with Kalen DeBoer. Well, then it comes out yesterday that he is now going to be the offensive coordinator for the Crimson Tide. What is this, the second or third time that he's been mentioned as, potentially being the offensive coordinator? Then he was the offensive coordinator for about a couple days, cup of coffee here. But now again, Ryan Grubb will be the offensive coordinator for the Alabama Crimson Tide heading into the 2025 season. So initially, Conrad, when you saw that Coach Grubb was going to potentially take this spot, what were your initial thoughts?
No, I mean, I think this is great news if you're an Alabama fan. I think this is an excellent hire. I think this is, anybody that's been following the situation, I think this is the outcome we were all hoping for. At the end of the day, and yeah, you hope that the third time's the charm, because as you mentioned, in 2023, when Tommy Rees was the OC, Nick Saban wanted to hire Ryan Grubb and interviewed him, and he decided to stay at Washington. That worked out pretty well for him. And then, of course, last year, he was the offensive coordinator for about 2 weeks, and then he decided to go take a job in Seattle after already coming here and talking to a lot of boosters and shaking hands and kissing babies, and then next thing you knew, he was out. But no, I think this is great, right? You're getting the band back together, a guy who's had a long history with Kalen DeBoer and a lot of success with him, and I'm just glad that they were able to get it done, because this is something that we've been talking about for a while now, and every now and then something would perk up a little bit in terms of, okay, it seems like maybe there's some traction, this deal's about to get done, and I'll give credit to our teammate Pat Smith, who has been kind of covering this from the beginning and just kind of letting, there's still stuff going behind the scenes. I know it's quiet, but, was adamant that something was going to get done. And I do wonder a little bit, and we can talk about this more later on in the show, but you had the news yesterday that Chip Kelly was leaving Ohio State to go back to the NFL, and he's now going to be the next OC for the Raiders. And, I just kind of wonder if that kind of a decision, maybe that was the final straw, so to speak, for the negotiations, where it's, maybe one side, they're trying to come to a middle ground, and you don't want him to go to Ohio State and replace Chip Kelly. And so maybe the fact that this news came out just a couple of hours later, maybe that decision there kind of motivated Alabama to go ahead and get this knocked out and get him in Tuscaloosa. And the good news to go along with it is, you can say what you want about Nick Sheridan and the job that he did as a first-year offensive coordinator this year. There were some really great moments for him. Of course, him, leaving the box early in the LSU game and taking a victory lap and moments like that, and what they were able to do against Georgia was great. But there were also, you could tell he was a first-year offensive coordinator,
Yep.
right? And it was kind of a difficult situation for him to maneuver at times, but it does appear that he is going to stay on the staff there in Tuscaloosa. And so it is important to note that Ryan Grubb, it was announced that he will be the offensive coordinator, not the co-offensive coordinator. So that would make you believe that Nick Sheridan is, maybe he just becomes co-OC. Maybe he goes back to working, in some capacity. He was the tight ends coach before. So, maybe that's somewhere that he goes back and does some work. But the fact that he's staying on board, and then Jamarcus Shepard, who was the co-OC last year, but he's the wide receivers coach, and he's a big piece of the success that they had at Washington as well. He's going to stay put as well. So you're not losing anybody, at least as of right now. Doesn't mean, that's not going to change, but you get to bring in Ryan Grubb, make him the offensive coordinator. I think we all agree Kane Womack did an excellent job, especially in the second half of the season with what that defense had turned into. So, you're looking pretty good right now. There's a big question mark, and we all know what it is, and it's, who's going to win the quarterback competition, and if it's Ty Simpson, is he truly ready for this opportunity? But, I feel like things are looking pretty good right now when you...
Yeah, I mean, it's early on.
It is, but, you look at, pretty stacked at wide receiver.
Yeah.
You're looking good at running back. You got some options at quarterback. Now, maybe none of them end up working out, but at least on paper, you got 3 solid choices, it would appear. Defensively, you got a bunch of guys coming back.
So, Crimson Conrad, you feel a little confident? You feel a little optimistic heading into the 2025 season?
I feel good. I've never been...
No, it's not like you've been
not
down.
In the doom and gloom kind of situation. But no, this was a splash that you needed. And the thing that... What this signifies to me more than anything is something that we had heard about Kalen DeBoer, is how loyal he was to his guys. And I can appreciate that and respect that. But in a situation like this, where there was a clear upgrade available at a coordinator position with somebody you're very, very familiar with, this kind of this to me is all right, we need to do whatever we can to win at a high level here. And that starts in 2025. That's not a year or two from now, then we'll really get things going. This was all right, yes, I could have stuck with Nick Sheridan, given him another chance to grow. I still think Alabama would have been in a spot to, at worst, go 9-4 again next year, right? But this was, I think, a clear indication of, all right, we need to win right now. We need to show these people that we're serious. And just because, I'm loyal to my guys doesn't mean I can't see an obvious upgrade when it's right in front of me. And finding a way to make that work and keeping everybody that's on the staff there and retaining them while also finding a way to make this work and bring Ryan Grubb as OC, I think that's a good sign for that he's not just going to play it safe and try to keep guys happy, right? He's there to go and make the best hires for this football program, and I think that was a good sign yesterday.
Yeah, and then you kind of think of just the success and the track record Coach Grubb has had with Kalen DeBoer. Everywhere he's gone, pretty much, Ryan Grubb has been there with him. And I think for Alabama, and to your point, Conrad, about the loyalty and the familiarity he has. He coached with Kane Womack when he was at Indiana, so he knew that when he had the opportunity to have him on the defensive side of the ball, he hired him. Somebody that's a former head coach that knows how to relegate everything, knows how to talk to the players. And now on the offensive side, of course, again, no disrespect to Coach Sheridan, and it's a big jump from wherever from just his track record, and then to be titled the offensive coordinator at the University of Alabama as your first coordinator job. Like, that is, even when you play NCAA on the game, that's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of things that you have to accomplish. But I think for Ryan Grubb, he did get his taste into the NFL with the Seattle Seahawks. Not to say that they were, a bad football team offensively, but it felt like, okay, he wants to get back to the coaching ranks in the collegiate level, and to do it with somebody that he has a lot of admiration for and has coached under for a majority of his career, just that familiarity. And I think that kind of bodes well too, because it probably won't look like a transitional period at the offensive side of the things, because he's had so much. He knows exactly what he's looking for with Kalen DeBoer. Kalen DeBoer knows that, okay, he knows my offense. I can kind of sit back and CEO this thing, where it's like, okay, this is more game management type things. And as far as having to lock in offensively, if trying to break down the game plan, it's like, no, Coach Grubb knows that. He knows exactly what I'm looking for, where I want to attack. And I think that this offense should take a step up. And I think that's where the biggest, to your point, the biggest question mark is, who's going to be the signal caller at the quarterback position, and how much confidence do you have? You don't want to see the Jalen Milroe regression that we saw from last season the 2 seasons ago in 23 and what we saw in 24, because of just the new look offense. So, and to your point too, if you're Ty Simpson, you've been there for this long. Now, are you ready to take that next step? Or is it one of these young freshmen, these younger guys, even Austin Mack? He comes in as somebody from Washington that made the jump with Kalen DeBoer. Is he ready? And also,
well, that's the interesting thing with Ryan Grubb too, is going into this, and this may have no effect whatsoever on who ultimately is the starting quarterback, but of the 3 guys in that room, he's familiar with one of them, and it's Austin Mack. So if somebody And I would imagine that there's a lot of similarities in the offense they ran last year and what Ryan Grubb is used to with
Mm-hmm.
Kalen DeBoer. But in terms of who might have a little bit of a head start, at least in familiarity with Ryan Grubb and what he was going to want out of his quarterback, maybe that's somewhere that Austin Mack has a little bit of a leg up now that he didn't have 2 days ago.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this goes, and it's crazy enough to think about it too. And I thought about this over the weekend. Quote unquote National Signing Day is Wednesday.
Yeah, I was about to
The
say, I feel like we just kind of
right.
a lot of the intrigue is gone because everybody, not everybody, but 95% of the players that you're familiar with are already signed.
Already signed. And it's just kind of, opening up that first signing day period now, because you got to think for so many years, this week was, oh man, that's when everybody focused on recruiting, and it can count down to Wednesday. You couldn't wait to see all the graphics and things from these teams. And to your point, everybody pretty much knows where they're going. These are kind of just the last little bit of, I guess signees and things. I don't know if necessarily it would change a lot of people's minds that if you were, going to Alabama where you waiting on Nick Sheridan to get out and Coach Grubb coming in. I don't think that really made too much of a difference, but it's something to kind of think about as we get ready for another college football season, getting closer to spring practice. And, just as long as college football season was, you still have that itch for it. So anytime we have news, kind of, with Ryan Grubb taking the offense coordinator position at Alabama, and even Coach Kelly, Chip Kelly, making the jump back to the NFL as an OC for the Las Vegas Raiders, and Ohio State has hit that. Coach Day has hit that Nick Saban mark of, I got to replace both coordinators after winning the championship. It's kind of a revolving door if you're down here, something that we've been used to for a long time. But now we're getting into the national landscape of college football, and something to monitor too. As signing day is Wednesday, or the second window of signing day is Wednesday moving forward. But we did have some action on the hardwood. Want to break down what went down with Alabama and Auburn in hoops action over the weekend. Also hear from you, just reaction to Coach Ryan Grubb being the offensive coordinator, and also just basketball this weekend. We're going to get a chance to break it all down. 205-834-9450 gets your text message, your calls. We're going to return here on Morning JOX and JOX 94.5.
6:17 here on your Monday morning. Appreciate you tuning in to Morning JOX here on JOX 94.5. Conrad Van Order, Damian Mitchell here with you, recapping the big news yesterday, at least if you are an Alabama football fan, that being that Ryan Grubb has been named the new offensive coordinator at the University of Alabama, rejoining Kalen DeBoer after the success they had not only at Indiana, but at Washington, going to a national championship game and having one of the best offenses in college football. So a lot of excitement there. But as Damian mentioned before the break, you had a big weekend for Alabama and Auburn in the world of college hoops as well. It was really a great weekend of SEC hoops for both Alabama and Auburn. You had Tennessee and Florida early on in the day, which when those two teams play, I guess it's just going to be a blowout every time now. I guess that's what we've learned in those two top 10 matchups we've gotten this year. You had Coach Cal. We got to talk about Coach Cal and what Arkansas was able to do over the weekend, but big weekends for both Alabama and Auburn, as we mentioned. We can start off with Auburn. They go down to Oxford, Mississippi, Damian, and they take on a top 25 Ole Miss Rebels team. And, credit to Ole Miss. This was a fairly competitive game throughout a lot of it. Auburn ultimately able to pull away there late, get a 92-82 win. Janai Broome goes for 20 and 12. Just another day in the office for the potential National Player of the Year. But you get double figures from all 5 starters. You get 10 from Cardwell. Chad Baker-Mazara throws in 18 for you as well. Denver Jones gives you 16. Miles Kelly gives you 15. You shoot 50% from three-point range.
Mm-hmm.
That'll work on the road in the SEC, and so Auburn now gets to add another quad 1 win to their resume, and they stay undefeated in SEC play, Damian.
Yeah, man. When all of your starters getting double figures, that's a great way to kind of put yourself in a great position. I think for Auburn too, man, it's hard to watch them and not think that they are the best basketball team in college basketball right now. And I think what Janai Broome has been able to do since coming back from injury, literally just picking up right where he left off. I think for Auburn.
And then you get the scare because he hurts his shoulder in this game, and you're like, oh, no, not again. But fortunately, it looks like he's all good.
Yeah. I mean, it's to me, if you're Auburn, this is how you wanted to perform in a situation like this in the top 25 matchup, because we know that Ole Miss is a good basketball team, but it never really felt like Ole Miss really had a chance. They came, they are competitive. I will give them that. They seemed like. For a period of time, I thought Padula was about to shoot him back into the ball game. I had a feeling.
Okay. I mean, they were hovering around 3 or 4 points down for a while.
Yeah, and I thought Padula was about to keep him back in that ball game. But for Auburn, just a complete effort. I mean, even with Dylan Cardwell, somebody that we know isn't really asked to put up that many points. They're not really looking at him to do anything offensively, but it gives you a double and 10 rebounds and 10 points as well. But just the overall. It felt early on that, Ole Miss was making it difficult for Auburn at first to find shots, but then it seemed as though like Auburn was getting into a rhythm, starting to find some comfort, and it didn't really matter who touched the ball. It felt like it was going in certain situations. And I think for Auburn, this is what you wanted to see. And when you go back, and even Janai Broome kind of with that step back 3 right before the halftime buzzer, it's like, okay, he really feeling it now. He's really starting to gel back into this offense of like, okay, I am the best player.
Your center is hitting step back threes like
with confidence.
That doesn't happen. That shouldn't happen.
It shouldn't. But I think for this Auburn team, they're showing that they are the best team in college basketball, and they did that. They had that on full display this weekend over Ole Miss in the 92-82 victory there in Oxford. And looking at it from Alabama perspective, started off a little slow, but once they started rolling, it was okay. This game is starting to get a little out of hand. And we've seen this Georgia team play Auburn early on in the season, and you saw how tough that they were at home. But then they hit the road, and Alabama, if there was any question of, like if this team is starting to figure things out, they answered that pretty well on Saturday night after they beat up on Georgia 90-69. But just an overall complete game for Alabama. At every level. And when you have, again, I think that we're starting to see, especially in the college basketball thing, the presence of the big man is still needed. And I think that for the style in which Alabama plays, to have the it's very different from Auburn when I say the depth conversation for Alabama because of just the way that they play. Whereas Alabama, they're more slashing, they're more attacking. One, Georgia couldn't really make a shot anyway. But the fact that they were still able to, be as prolific as they were outside and still be able to work it in. And to me, when Aiden Sherrill, because of the fact that we barely really know his name, we know his impact as far as just grabbing boards, but what he was able to add to their offense as well, it kind of shows, okay, Alabama's actually able to kind of mold their style when they don't have to play, super fast. Like they can actually work it down to a big man, get some get some pick and roll action, and boom, their big man's right there at the rim, and nobody's there to contest him because he's wide open because you're so worried about the guards going out there and shooting the ball. Which they still had some good scoring from their guards, but it was very complimentary basketball for Alabama this weekend. I think Nate Oss is starting to realize, okay, yeah, we can win in a bevy of ways, and they showed it Saturday against Georgia.
Yeah, and you bring up Sherrill and what he was able to do, getting some more minutes, and you add in the fact that your backup, we're talking about Janai Broome, hitting step back threes, and then for Alabama, your backup centers hits 2 threes in a game as well, and you're just kind of like, all right, if they're gonna fall, they're gonna fall. But no, this was a weird game. I don't want to say it's frustrating it was frustrating to watch because you won by 21 points in SEC play, but Alabama took 19 less shots than Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
They turned the ball over 14 more times. They got out rebounded on the offensive glass by Georgia. Every metric in terms of second chance opportunities, turnovers, all of that favored Georgia dramatically. But they shoot 17% from three. At one point, they were shooting like 7% from three. Late in the second half. It was they couldn't buy a bucket from outside on Saturday, but again, it's one of those games where you look at it, and if you're Alabama, you're like, all right, there's a lot of things we can clean up for this, but we still just scored 90 and won by 20 plus against a NCAA tournament caliber opponent. And that's where you just kind of scratch your head and you're like, man, that just shows you how good this team is, that when, there's a lot of teams that would play like that and they would be the one that was losing by 21 points, right? And so the fact that you're able to overcome all of that, and it was a great shooting night. You go 42% from deep, over 50% from the floor. You shoot 82% from the free throw line as well. Sears gives you 20 points. You had Grant Nelson giving you 16. Chris Youngblood adds in 10. And you got some solid three-point shooting all around. We added what Sherrill did. Aiden Holloway with a couple of big shots as well. But no, this is a good win for Alabama. And I think at home, still playing a little sloppy as we've seen. Haven't played the best at home this year in SEC play. But to get a win like that certainly helps. And now if you're Alabama, you get the kind of the midweek break this week. You don't have to play again until Saturday. So hopefully some rest is going to be good for these guys. Philon was questionable coming in. He's been banged up. Darion Reed's been banged up. So good for these guys to get some rest. And, you're right there behind Auburn now at 8-1 in the SEC. And if you hadn't or weren't aware, we are 12 days away from the first Iron Bowl of basketball. It is February 15th, the day after Valentine's Day. So a lot to look forward to there. But yeah, now you get to go and play Arkansas this weekend. You get to take the week off, get some guys healthy, get some rest. But an impressive win for both Alabama and Auburn. And again, as we watch these other teams, and I brought up what you saw, Tennessee and Florida, that game looked like, and what Arkansas was able to go and do, knocking off Kentucky. And it's like everybody else is just kind of knocking themselves out, kind of cannibalizing themselves in the SEC a little bit. And Alabama, you have the loss to Ole Miss, Auburn staying undefeated, and they're just kind of sitting there right at the top right now, just waiting for that showdown with each other on February 15th. So it's pretty cool to see both Alabama and Auburn continuing to separate themselves as clearly the two best teams in the league right now.
Absolutely. And speaking of the Arkansas Razorbacks and Coach Cal, and we all had a feeling that, his first trip back to Rupp Arena after 15 interesting years and a lot of success there at Kentucky. And it felt as though John Calipari, he played it like, I'm villain number one. If they want to boo me, cool. If they want to cheer, cool. I'm not really worried about it. Like, they can do whatever they want. But I went into it thinking that Arkansas I thought the hype was going to be too much. I really did. At least going into the game. I thought Cal was probably overthinking some stuff. Like these players are just like, hey, we understand that was y'all's coach. He's with us now. We rocking with him. But the game was very chippy on both sides. It felt as though some of the Kentucky players took suit to a lot of the extracurriculars from Arkansas. And not to say that Arkansas didn't deservedly so. I mean, they took the fight to Kentucky. And I think that this Arkansas team, they wanted to prove a point of like, okay, now as inconsistent as we've played early on, we're not afraid of this challenge that is Kentucky being across the other side. And I felt as though that they played very confidently, as in it looked like a Kentucky coached basketball team that was playing for Arkansas, because of the fact that, okay, when they had, fast break opportunities, it felt as though when they needed a shot, they got it. And it really felt as Arkansas was like, no, we are the better team going into this matchup, and we're about to show it to you. And that's exactly what they did. And, some things there towards the end of the game, got a little chippy, got a little bit of a skirmish and a little bit back and forth. But I think for this Arkansas team, you're showing that you have it in you. You can get this thing done. So as far as bad as you've played early on, now we've seen you knock off a top 15 Kentucky team. This is now the standard for y'all moving forward. Don't let this be just a one-off because of the fact, it's Kentucky on the other side. It's, okay, this can be a snowball effect to the point of, all right, we got a confident bunch. You know what the SEC schedule is going to look like, and you've got that signature win to kind of, if things start getting a little chippy or they have a little bit of question marks as far as where you fall in the rankings, you can say, well, hey, we got Kentucky. A lot of teams can't really say that right now. And if they are, they're already ahead of Kentucky anyway. So it's okay. We're finding where we fit into this totem pole of things. But the way that Arkansas went out and played Saturday night, Coach Cal, he has his moments, and these are the moments where it's like, okay, we can't really count him out, because he took a very underperforming Arkansas team on the road in the SEC and beat a top 15 Kentucky.
Yeah, and I think the coolest thing to see was, you could tell it felt like the players, there were moments where, and you see it a lot when, maybe it looks like a coach is going to be fired or something. And I don't think, they were going to get rid of Cal after 1 year or anything, but you could tell it looked like the players, they realized how big of a moment that was, not only for them, but for their coach. And it looked like he had a team of guys out there that wanted to win that basketball game for him. Right. And that's something that comes down to coaching, right? Getting your guys to buy in and getting them to believe that not only, do they have a big opportunity in front of them, but that they can take that opportunity and run with it. And that's exactly what they did. And the fact that you win not only on the road, like you're saying, but you win by double digits and, down the stretch, you really just kind of clamp down on Kentucky and you're like, no, we're not giving up this game. And, for all the struggles they had, you could easily see where a team, especially a team that's as good offensively as Kentucky is, they would have a little run there late and maybe be able to get the lead back and hold on and avoid the upset. But props to Coach Cal, and, he had his guys ready. You might be able to say that there's a lot of games this year where they didn't look like they were ready to play, but in one of their bigger opportunities so far, they have they made the most of it. And, they're not going to be in the NCAA tournament field now. But if Arkansas, if you piece a couple of wins together here, you're going to start creeping up and having an opportunity to maybe be a bubble team come March. So you've got a long way to go. You're going to have to get a lot more wins than just that one. But that certainly was a big one and maybe a spark for Arkansas the rest of the way. And now if you're Kentucky, again, this is life in the SEC, right? You beat Tennessee in a great game, and you have some momentum going, and then you come up against an Arkansas team that you probably should have been able to beat without too much trouble, just based on how we've seen them play so far this year. And now you find yourself sitting there at 4-4 in conference play. So it's a gauntlet here in the SEC, no doubt about it. But just quickly going over the rest of what you got over the SEC Hoops weekend, as we mentioned, Tennessee knocks off Florida 64-44. If you remember, Florida beat Tennessee by 30 early in SEC play, and then Tennessee now. So they lose by 30 when they're healthy. And then this weekend,
without Zakai Ziegler.
No Zakai Ziegler, no Milicic. Two of your best players are both out, and you beat them by 20. And it's just kind of the weird world of basketball and how that works. But Tennessee, they knock off Florida 64-44. They move to 5-4 in the SEC. Texas A&M, they get a close win over South Carolina on the road, 76-72. Missouri absolutely beat down on Mississippi State. Mississippi State just looked like they were a little tired from a rough stretch here in the SEC, and obviously we know what happened against Alabama midweek last week, but Missouri wins 88-61. How about Oklahoma? Oklahoma playing a top 25 Vanderbilt team. Oklahoma blows out the Commodores 97-67. Big win for Oklahoma there in SEC play. And then Texas, they do the same thing to LSU. They beat them by 31, 89-58. So Texas and Oklahoma maybe finding their footing a little bit here in the SEC. Granted, not the top teams in the conference, but hey, Oklahoma knocking off a very good Vanderbilt team. Very impressive there. So great weekend as far as SEC hoops go, and another great week coming up.
Absolutely. Come on, South Carolina, get you one. Find a way to get you one.
Surely they're not going to be like Missouri last year. Surely not.
Hopefully not. 205-834-9450. Phone lines, text line always open here on Morning JOX. We'll get a chance to hear from you. Just recap what you want to talk about over the weekend. Also some NBA news that broke over the weekend that kind of threw a lot of things into loop. All that and so much more when we return here on Morning JOX and JOX 94.5. 6:36 here on Morning JOX, JOX 94.5. Damian Mitchell, Conrad Van Order, and you as well. 205-834-9450. Conrad, did you watch any of the Grammys last night?
I did. My page wanted to watch them, so I actually watched pretty much the entire show. Shout out to Beyonce, won Album of the Year.
Yeah.
For Cowboy Carter. I know a lot of people weren't super happy that she won Country Album of the Year because she's not a country artist, but she made a country album, so
she did.
Feel like, I don't know, nobody had a problem with Taylor Swift making pop albums after being a country, whatever. But but no, good night for Beyonce. I was happy. Again, like, this might come off as hateful or whatever. I was just glad to see somebody other than Taylor Swift win some awards because it feels like every time she comes out with an album, she just wins everything. And, I think that a lot of people would agree this last album wasn't her best. So to see her not win a bunch of awards for not her best work was refreshing to see. And it's cool. See Sabrina Carpenter got The Weeknd to go and perform.
Yes.
He absolutely killed it. And I was kind of taken aback because they did the moment where they were up there and they're like, yeah, so The Weeknd called out the Grammys for basically being bogus and not doing a good job of picking, the right winners and everything. I'm like, man, they're just hammering this dude. And then they pull it off with but we fixed that now. Everything's all good. So here's The Weeknd. He's going to perform for you. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's kind of a cool way to do that. But no, it was interesting. Saw a lot of people very taken aback by the outfit choice for Kanye's wife.
Yeah. Or lack thereof, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, that's just one of those things where I just really realized I don't understand fashion. And if you saw how I dressed every day, you would know that just by the fact that I have no style whatsoever. But yeah, I don't understand how a clear sheet counts as fashion. I also don't know how you can just walk around butt naked, essentially, and not have any consequences for that. So it was an interesting night, to say the least.
It was indeed. It was indeed. And how about your boy Kendrick Lamar? I've never seen a diss track be so successful, so commercially successful.
Everybody was singing along when he was going up there and taking Sunday's going to be fun.
It's going to be insane. It's going to be insane. As soon as you hear the beat drop, it's about to get wicked down there. And
but it was cool for him to get, I think he won Record of the Year and Song of the Year, which, again, like, traditionally just categories that you don't see hip-hop artists win very often. So for him to have I know a lot of people probably don't know what we're talking about, but he had a pretty big song and a pretty big year, so it was cool to see that be recognized. And they did a lot of great stuff for the wildfires and, raising money and doing all that stuff for LA. So that was cool to see.
It was. It was indeed. 205-834-9450. But speaking of Texas, what we came back to by one Beyonce knows Carter. We had some news happen in the NBA that kind of just shook everything. Right when you just got done watching the Lakers play.
This saved the NBA.
You just got done watching the Lakers play the Knicks on Saturday night, and pretty much an hour later, you get the news that a humongous, when we say just jaw-dropping trade happens. One, very fitting that Anthony Davis didn't play Saturday, which is something that we're kind of accustomed to. Hence why Charles Barkley calls them street clothes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now he's going to be, when he does put on a jersey again, it's going to be for another team. That would be the Dallas Mavericks, as in a 3-team deal and a lot of players. But the big two names that are going to be swapped over, the Los Angeles Lakers now have Luka Doncic, and the Dallas Mavericks now have Anthony Davis. And at first, you're thinking it's like a joke because
I thought Shams got hacked.
Right. No whisperings, no rumblings, no speculation. No, you're just hit with a bombshell that Luka Doncic is going to be an LA Laker. LeBron is, of course, he's 40 years old, going out here balling the way that he is. But we know that he is going against father time. And if you're the LA Lakers, only you could have pulled this off. And if you're the Dallas Mavericks, it's okay. You give up on a 25-year-old who has been first team All-NBA 5 years out of the 6 years he's been in the league.
When he's healthy, in my opinion, he is the best player in the NBA.
And there's no question about it. He just took you to the NBA Finals. A Dallas Mavericks team that really and truly had no thought that I'd be seeing them in the NBA Finals. But that's just how dominant Luka has been. And now you're pairing him up with LeBron James in the later years of his career. Anthony Davis now on the Dallas Mavericks, who,
I mean,
if
the
this
Mavericks are
was
still pretty good. Like,
right, and I think that had this been 5-6 years ago, this could arguably be the best three-headed monster you've seen on a basketball court with Anthony Davis, Klay Thompson in this prime, and Kyrie Irving. Now they're all a little bit older, but they're still able to win, and they're good enough to win now in the Western Conference. Now, if you're the LA Lakers, it's okay, you're at least putting the pieces of what's it going to look like without LeBron James being on the floor. And adding a Luka Doncic to that level, it may not look, flashy to start things off, but if you're looking at the 5-year to 10-year range, you're setting yourself up pretty nicely having Luka on the court.
yeah, I mean, this is clearly a move for the post-LeBron time in LA, right? Because I mean, he's getting older. He's still playing at a very high level. It's kind of funny that this happened the same night that he had a 30-point triple-double and just goes out there and you're like, oh yeah, you're still one of probably the 10 best players in the world and you're 40. But no, this was clearly a move by the Lakers of, hey, we need the next superstar here and we're going to try to keep him in Los Angeles for the rest of his career. And like you were saying, I mean, when he's healthy, he's my favorite player to watch when he's healthy. He is so good at literally everything on a basketball court. Like, if you are not somebody that watches the NBA, and I know a lot of people listening probably don't, like, just watch him play one time. Like, it is truly remarkable everything that he was able to do on the court in Dallas, where he was essentially asked to shoulder the burden in every which way, right? And I know Kyrie helped with that a little bit the last couple of years, but he is a rare generational talent. Like, if he were to retire right now, he would probably be in the Hall of Fame, and he's like 26 years old. That's just how good he is. But, I saw the common thing on social media kind of going around this weekend was, okay, this is a big deal, but like, explain this to me in football terms. Like, what would be the equivalent in the NFL or something that would just blow everyone's minds? Because I will say, this is probably the craziest trade in professional sports that in my life.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, just in terms of, you don't see, and the circumstances of it, which we can get into in a second, but a player like this isn't traded, right?
Exactly.
Like, this would have been like the Cavaliers trading LeBron James when he was 22 years old. Like that kind of a time where it's just unfathomable. It doesn't matter what anybody offers you. You're not even answering the phone. And so for it to go down, just like you said, no rumblings, no rumors, it just happens. It was so shocking. But the NFL equivalent I came up with is if, let's say, the Bengals traded Joe Burrow for Dak Prescott, just like out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And just Dak Prescott in a second round pick. And you're like, okay, well, I mean, Dak Prescott's not bad, but he has a little bit of an injury history these last couple of years. He's good, but Joe Burrow is elite. And it was just that kind of a shocking trade where, again, like, if you go and play NBA 2K on PlayStation or Xbox, whatever, you couldn't do this trade in the game. Like,
right.
the game would reject it and say, no, you're smoking crack. Like, no, you can't make this trade. And the fact that you then find out from Nico Harrison, the GM of the Mavericks, he only talked to the Lakers, or maybe he talked to one other team. It seems like, according to him, essentially, he approached the Lakers and said, do you want Luka Doncic? And they worked out a deal.
Yeah.
And, some of it appears to be his conditioning, and they're not happy with his. Dude, do you see how he plays? I don't care.
I could care less.
I don't care if that dude's eating a bucket of fried chicken every night. He goes out there and performs, doesn't
exactly.
he? Like, and that's the thing that doesn't, it's weird. It feels like there has to be some sort of a personal issue there, whether it's management doesn't like him, he doesn't like management, they're not able to communicate. Because I don't care. You do not trade a player like that. It has to be something bad. Because you don't trade a player like that without a bidding war. There's no way. That makes zero sense. You could have gotten way more than Anthony Davis in a first round pick in 2029.
Yeah.
You can't even use the pick for 4 years. And this is the best player that's been available in a trade in the last how many decades of the NBA? And you don't shop him around. You go to one team and say, hey, do you want this top 5 player? Yeah, I think we do. Okay. Let's make a deal.
I'm telling you, man.
It's bizarre, and somebody's going to get fired for this. I just straight up. Like, somebody's going to get fired.
Yeah, it's something that really definitely took us by storm, and just like you said, it went from wait a minute, is Shams hacked? Like you tell me Luka's going where? And it's official. It's definitely official. 205-834-9450 gets your text messages, your calls when we return here on Morning Jocks and Jocks 94.5. .651 here on Morning Jocks, Jocks 94.5. And Damian Mitchell, Conrad Van Order here with you for a few more moments as we get you set for McElroy and Kubelik in the morning from 7 to 10, then three-man front. Conrad will be back with Pat and Landrum and Molly from 10 to 2, and Paul Feinbaum and the Paul Feinbaum Show from 2 to 6. So you want to keep it locked here on Jocks 94.5. Of course, just recapping over the weekend with Alabama and Auburn getting both teams getting wins over the weekend. UAB also getting on the winning side of things, knocking off Charlotte 96-78, and the Sanford Bulldogs knock off the Citadel 83-58. Let's go to the phone lines before we get up out of here. Let's go to our buddy John. Wants to talk some Auburn, Alabama hoops with us this morning. What's going on, John?
Not too much. Gentlemen, the funny thing about the Davis trade is on Thursday, he said the Lakers need another big man. Well, I guess they're going to get one.
I was about to say, they definitely need one now.
I think the big thing that separates Auburn and Alabama from everybody else in the SEC is they have that clear guy, that clear leader that when they talk, everybody else listens. But I think the difference in leadership is the difference in the record for Auburn and Alabama. With Sears, when he gets to going, one of the biggest problems for Alabama is when Sears gets to cooking, they just stop moving altogether. But when they get in trouble, his mentality is, I've got to be the one to do it. And he just tries to take everything over. And he's been successful for the most part. With Auburn, a lot of times when they start getting in trouble, you'll see the movement get stagnant. The difference is Broom is a vocal leader. You will see him actually grab him. You go here, you go there. But he knows if he has to be the one to take the shot or he has to be the one to get the attention, he can make the right pass. So I think that's the difference in between Auburn and Alabama, and that's why they're ahead of everybody else. Is they have that clear dog, that clear leader, the clear one to do what they've got to do. I hang up and listen. You guys have a great morning.
Hey, we appreciate you, John. And I've never really thought about it from that. I've looked at it from the scoring aspect of it, but I hadn't really looked into the leadership aspect. But yeah, you definitely know who the leaders of those two teams are with Janai Broom and with Mark Sears for Alabama.
Yeah, no, you certainly do. And I think there is, kind of a point to what he was saying, especially with, kind of the way Alabama plays too. I understand like in the locker room and kind of that form of leadership, but out there on the court, I just feel like it's so free flowing that it's a little, you're not going to have a guy like Janai Broom where it's, all right, you need to be here, because it's like freestyle basketball essentially, right? But I do think for Janai Broom, like, if you want to, like, I guess, get in the weeds with a little bit, like, the problems that we saw with Auburn, like, right, it was freshmen right on a plane early in the season having some problems, and you look at Alabama and, you had a problem with Mark Sears, who's supposed to be your leader. And so maybe, that's where you want to give, Janai Broom the nod in that regard or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I think it's very obvious in both of those programs who leads the way and who sets the tone.
Absolutely. Let's go to the Jocks text line 205-834-9450. We have some people text in talking about the Lakers trade. Drake takes in and says Lakers just do what they want to do, which I do agree with.
Hey, he was served up to them on a silver platter.
It was. It was.
The Mavericks went to them. They didn't go to the Mavericks.
It's hard to say no. Tom texts in and says, you're right. It makes no sense to trade them. We have players that are healthy that refuse to play games, talking about load management. True that.
To be fair, Luka also hasn't played since Christmas with a injury, so.
Yeah. Somebody disagrees with our assessment, says Luka's not the best player. He's the best offensive player. He just doesn't play defense.
Well, I mean, nobody really does in the NBA.
Exactly. I could care less. He out there giving me 34, 9, and 9 on a random Wednesday. Like, I'll take it.
But that's a fair point. Yes, he is the best offensive player.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Defense? Nah. I got the Carmelo Anthony route of things. Like, I was paid to put the ball in the hoop. That's all I need. That's all I need to know. Defense, we'll figure it out. We'll just zone him, make him beat you with the 3. Nah, Luka knows. He knows what he does. His impact will be felt. Now, how's it gonna look with LeBron James? Well, in the backstretch of the getting ready for the All-Star game and stuff. So,
hey, I'm just proud of the Lakers. They didn't have to give up Bronny in that trade. That's big time right there.
We want Bronny. Heard those chants in New York. Mac and Cube in the morning. They're next.